Hey there, friends. Welcome back to another Dinkum build. I'm very excited to show you guys this one. This was actually a giant pond in this area, and I apparently didn't push my Stream Deck button hard enough to hit record when we were filling all this in. But you guys don't really need to know what that looks like, right? You know what dirt printing looks like. We got this huge pond down to this little like octagonal shape, and here I am doing some math and doing some laying out of the footprint of what is going to be these little villas or condos. This is one of the first builds I've done in a while next to the library that I didn't use any reference photos for, which is, you know, if you've been following my channel for a while, you know that's kind of my thing. That's where I build places I've been or places I have reference photos for, and this was just sort of conjured out of my imagination. I did get a little inspiration from TheOriginalMatt. His island was toured by GerseGames not that long ago, and he had a very similar space on his island where he had like apartments or condos or whatever you want to call it. And I was like, that's a cool idea, and I'd like to do something like that on my island. And now with the open beta for Summer Sun, we have all these wonderful colored pathing tiles. And I was like, okay, that could really lead to some very interesting buildings and what you can do with all of that. So here I am just kind of laying out, okay, what's the diameter going to be? And placing items down, kind of going, okay, where do I want things to go? It's kind of a different building style for me in a way, because I'm usually looking at something and, you know, copying it. And this time I was just like, I've got to come up with all the things on my own. And so I decided I've had a lot of people ask me lately, hey, I like your speed builds, but I can't really follow along. So this one, I definitely left in a lot more of the process, and I did slow it down a little bit so that way you can follow along building this particular build if you wanted to do something like this on your island. I love the new pergolas. They're basically being used in like every new build. And you know, why not? It's you can't ever have too much of a good thing, right? I do love that they add so much more dimension sometimes to these builds and add like porches or, you know, different, you know, to change up the roof line. It's just a lot more variety I feel like is offered with these pergolas, and a lot more opportunity for interesting builds. And so I definitely, when I was like, I've got this idea in my head for like a retirement community in Florida, like these little villas, and they have these little porches and, you know, brightly colored homes, and that's kind of where the inspiration came in for all of this. Initially, I was going to do something a lot more muted in terms of color. Here, I'm providing the dimensions. So yeah, if you guys want to build this for yourself, this is the footprint. 8 by 8 for the tile base at the bottom. And then the porch area where the pergola is 3 tiles built up. And then the very first row, the column that you see there that I'm standing in front of, that's 8 high. And then the 2 back rows are 9 high to make the roof line. Anyway, yeah, so I had Florida, you know, retirement village in mind as I was building this. Not necessarily a retirement village, but you know, when you think of Florida, you think of everybody's retired. So this was interesting because I normally, because I'm using reference photos, I literally just, okay, I could play around and do it with whatever I wanted and figure out, okay, what architecturally is going to look good. And so kind of what you're witnessing here is me just deciding, okay, I need to add more to this. I need to change up the roof line a little bit. All those little trial and error things you have to do to kind of get the look eventually the way you want it, because I don't care what anybody says, usually there's a period of time that you need to kind of figure out what you're doing. It's not as deep as it could be in terms of like the actual house part is very shallow. This was more to be a perspective build initially when I first started thinking about it, because I'm eventually, as you'll see here later in the video, I built up on a cliffside too to kind of get a different elevation. But because I'm almost at max height with this, it didn't work out quite the way I wanted. But by the time I got to that part, I was like, I'm so invested in what this design looks like that I just left it. And, you know, from the sides, you can see a lot better, but straight on, it's not as visible as I was hoping it would be. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Anyway, I really wanted to use the pergola as a porch on the front of these little condos, and I thought, you know, had different ideas of what to make this look like. Initially, I left a little space there so that I could put like a table and chairs or something, but then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, you know, I think just leaving it simple is a good way to go. And that's what I did eventually. You know, I experimented with a few things, and I do think I left that in there for everybody. You know, width of the window, or whatever you want to call that, like the French, you know, the French doors that go out onto your patio. I mean, some of y'all have been to Florida, right? You know what I'm talking about. Maybe this is translating for you. I wasn't initially sure about the colors. You know, I was like, we've got all these colored pathing tiles, and I keep talking about how that's going to be so great for all the different buildings that we could do, et cetera, et cetera. And then I haven't really used them in a build for a building. I tend to definitely go more traditional color palettes and more muted colors or neutral colors. And if I'm going to copy something like from Florida or New Orleans or, you know, Positano, Italy, you know, they all have brightly colored buildings. And I did this as a prototype, and then I did the next one right next to it as a mirror of this particular build in yellow. And the more I looked at it, the more I was like, yep, doing them in bright colors, all the buildings being a different color, I think is the way to go, especially for this, what I'm going for over here. So, yeah, I'm sitting here playing around with the different tiles for the door and the window, which, you know, is kind of the biggest challenge. And because the door is only one space wide, I couldn't use anything to kind of mimic a door, like a wardrobe or anything like that, that really made sense. So, yeah, I was just, you know, I like the gingerbread as like windows, but it wasn't giving me quite the right look I was going for. So here I decide, let's build it up one. And, you know, because I have a more modern aesthetic when it comes to houses or buildings, you know, at least I feel anyway. I wanted to do something different with the roof so that it had a little bit more, what do you want to call it? Architectural interest, if that's a thing that you can say. I liked how when I initially got all the ramps down, it kind of looks like skylight windows up there, you know, in some more, you know, contemporary or like mid-century builds, they have windows that look kind of like that. And I don't know, if you're doing like any kind of villa or condo in Florida, I feel like there's a lot of mid-century sort of inspired architecture just because of, you know, the region and, you know, how things look down there. So I ended up really liking the way that roofline looked, and I was, you know, experimenting with just different shapes and things that I don't normally do, even if this does seem, you know, pretty typical for me. It felt new and fresh, and, you know, it really, I played for like an entire day straight getting this build done. I did some prep work ahead of time, but an entire day straight and then some, because Sunny does eventually come over and help me out. And I also wanted to show it off to her and, you know, get her opinion, as one does with their best building buddy in Dinkum. I also color coded all the flower boxes and whatnot to the color of the building. It may be a little matchy-matchy for some. I totally get that. I tend to be very monochromatic when it comes to coloring. It's aesthetically pleasing for me. It may not be for everybody, and that's fine. I was thinking, okay, this, you know, a lot of places in Florida are built up off the ground, you know, for flooding and hurricanes and things like that. But it was just so much brick and so much like flatness, and I was like, what can we do here? And initially I thought, I'll put this out and maybe do some planters or something down here. And then I was like, it's making everything a lot bigger than I wanted it to be. So I took it out and just went with the old reliable of some hedging, and I really liked that it added a pop of color down there, some greenery, and a different texture. And I didn't have to do too much extra thought in what that would look like. And here I am with my trusty floor lights. It's become a new favorite item in the game. I put them everywhere. I love that they are unobtrusive to the line of what you're building, that you can add all this subtle light without having to use glow buttons anymore. And it also doesn't create any kind of visual breakup of what you're doing. Like I could have put garden lights there on that little spot where I put the floor lights, but then it would have added something that I didn't really want there to be. So, okay, we've got our first condo done. Now we've got to mirror that on the other side. This was an idea I'd had for a while to do kind of a neighborhood or something where the houses kind of mirrored each other. You know, we have some subdivisions and you know, housing developments that do that, where they'll share a driveway or they'll have a walkway space that's shared where the doors kind of match up, but the layouts are literally flipped or mirrored from each other. So that's kind of what the concept here was. And I really liked how it came out aesthetically, you know, and I'm realizing as I'm dirt printing this, I messed up and didn't create the columns. So I had to go in and dig out some dirt printing, but you know, that happens to all of us, right? It's not just me. Yeah, so anyway, it was a lot of fun putting these together and creating this sort of look. I mean, it's probably not an original idea. Maybe subconsciously I'm pulling from something else somewhere else, but I was pretty proud of myself for not having to use a reference photo this time around. I was just like, you know what, let's just see what we can do. And, you know, I'm trying to get out of my comfort zone and do new things. And this is one of them. And I'm really, really happy with how this all came together in the end. Once I got that first one built and I figured out the dimensions and all the little things, the others went very quickly. So if you were going to build a neighborhood with all these matching houses, because you know how like some new housing developments, you know, all the houses are very cookie cutter and basically the same. You know, there's like 3 or 4 you can choose from, but there's only going to be 3 or 4 different versions of the house, and they're all still very similar. So that's kind of what this is. I do love the fact that we've got new hibiscus colors. These colored pathing tiles, I feel like there's just so many opportunities for those when it comes to like, if you're doing like city core, and making different shops and whatnot, I think it's going to be an immensely helpful tool to have in all of our creative builds. This little pond, I always had the idea that I would build up the middle and put the fountain. Because, you know, I feel like in a lot of these high-end luxury neighborhoods, the entrances to them are always very, you know, you got this really nice sign and you've got these elaborate water fountains or fake waterfalls. And I felt like this just really screams like Florida condo, vacation homes, timeshares, whatever you want to call this, you know, condos, villas, retirement community, you name it. You can imagine it to be whatever you want. I won't limit you. Later on, you'll see that I started laying out some of the alphabet tiles to make a sign. That is probably going to be changed. I didn't do it in this video because I'm still working on how I'm going to transition this build from one thing to the next, but we can get into that later. So yeah, this is just me making this little pond area look like a pond. You know, hopefully some cool fish spawn in there later. And, you know, I think I had a shark in there at one point, one day. I also wanted these houses that are on the canal or the river or whatever you want to imagine this to be, to have kind of a back patio deck area that goes straight out to the water. And I decided to just do something very simple, basically a doorway, rather than do anything more elaborate in terms of the architecture back here. I probably could have added in something for some windows, but I didn't want to take away from that, you know, straight line, and it gives me some room for other items out here. I did use the palmwood deck bridge or whatever you want to call that. I would definitely say it's not in the game officially. You can pull it out of dev commands. In a very small space like this, it doesn't really cause a problem. But if you're going to use it in a much bigger way, it definitely has some multiplayer glitch issues that you need to be aware of. You as the actual, you know, island owner probably would never see it, but if you had any visitors come over, it can glitch out and make it look like it's like 10 feet tall. So just be very careful. If you're using dev commands, this bridging, while I absolutely love it, and get, you know, the visual look of it, you can't put anything on it, and it definitely has some issues from time to time. So just keep that in mind. You know, if you're going to use it in a very small way like this. I thought that it was helpful to have something that kind of, hey, if you live in Florida and you're living on the ocean, but you're living maybe on the bay side or the canal side, you know, a lot of these people have decks or access to the water straight out the back of their house. So we're kind of doing that in a very, very small scale here. I didn't want to do anything super elaborate because this is not a super large area, but I also want it to look lived in and like, okay, people would have stuff on the back. They'd have jet skis, you know, that's pretty popular in Florida. Sailboats, pontoon boats, you know, yachts, all of those things. Well, we're pretty limited on the watercraft in this game, but we do, I think I did put out some jet skis later and like a rowboat. And I was gonna put a sailboat, but it was a little big and you could see it from behind the houses. Like if you're standing in front, you could kind of see it off to the side. So I was like, I didn't want it to break up the visual line that I was trying to go for. So I opted for the rowboat instead. And here I am building another one. This one is gonna go a little faster since you guys got a more, you know, slowed down version of the very first one. But this, we do them in every single color. Blue, yellow, green, purple, orange, pink, red, and white. And visually, it's very pretty to see them all together. I was very, very pleased with how that ended up looking in the end. Wasn't sure about it at first, but then once we put it into practice, it definitely, it came out great. I definitely, on my Extreme Makeover Island, I want to build like a actual neighborhood like we saw in Grammy Q's Island Tour just the other day on GerseGames' channel. And do actual houses maybe, and maybe a combination of condos or villas or whatever you want to call them, and actual like suburban like homes. I really like how that looks, and these different colors just add so much more variety than the wood pathing. Nothing wrong with the wood pathing, it's old reliable. The brick, obviously I use it in everything. See, there you go, that's the sign I was talking about. And now we've got a purple one magically in the, you know, magic of editing. Boom, it's done. This one is where I have two behind the purple and the green one elevated, which I guess I get to in a little bit, but here I am showing a sped up version of me kind of decorating around this little pond as a central focal point here in this little neighborhood. I think I tweaked a few things here and there as I was working on it, mixing all the different green foliage plus some colorful flowers, because I do tend to stay, I did all these brightly colored homes. I wanted the foliage and the flowers to be a little bit more muted, so that way your eye is more focused on the houses than the actual landscaping. But you may choose to focus on the landscaping and not the houses. You could do a much more like muted color palette if bright colors are not your thing, and then, you know, bring in the colors when it comes to your plants and flowers. I think either way is great. I just wanted to do something a little different. I build a lot of things with the marble and the brick and the mossy pathing and the wood, and haven't really built anything with the colored pathing tiles. Now that sign on the ground, you'll see in the final walkthrough that it stays there. I'm waiting to see, and we added two more, red and white. Waiting to see kind of just where I'm gonna transition from the library area over here to this neighborhood. And here we are, final walkthrough. I didn't show all the condos being built because, well, I mean, it's the same exact thing over and over again in different colors, but you guys get the idea. If you want to go back to the very beginning of the video and look at the dimensions that I posted and get a feel for how you can build this yourself, go right ahead. You can copy it in every single way. I don't care. I'm not a gatekeeper on that kind of thing. If you like it and you want it on your island, I say copy it down to the last square. We're all here to inspire each other. There's a recreational area coming to that little corner, and there's another one just over here on the other side of the blue house. I had not really decided, am I gonna do like a tennis court? Am I gonna do shuffleboard? Am I gonna do like a little putting green? I thought about putting in a swimming pool or something like that, but I already have a community pool on the island, and I have the big hotel resort pool. I just was like, a pool isn't a very unoriginal idea. So I'm still thinking about that, and that'll probably come in a future video, because why put it all in one, right? When you can do like little pieces here and there. But yeah, I really, this is where I wish we did not have a limitation on how high we could build, because that back level could have been a couple tiles higher so that you guys could see the pink and the orange one more from the front, directly head on, than you can currently. But from the side, visually stunning look to have them on the multi-levels like that. It really, it turned out well from the side, so I'm happy about that. But James, if you could ever unstick us from the height limit, and of course, from the air, it looks great. You get to see all the colors. and it looks like a wonderful little rainbow. But yeah, if we could ever build higher, that would be spectacular. Thank you, James. Anyway, this is what it looks like from the air. And then we're gonna see what it looks like from at nighttime. I do like that all those floor lights really do add this really subtle lighting. And then I popped in some, street lamps here and there for some, typical neighborhood type lighting that you would see. But yeah, I hope this is something that inspires you to build maybe a little neighborhood on your island, villas, condos, whatever your heart's desire, create a wonderful vacation spot on your island, because you can't take a vacation this year, and we can all live in our little virtual worlds, hanging out together now that we can do 6 people on an island, or, well, that will be a reality when the Summer Sun update actually launches for everyone. Anyway, guys, this build was a lot of fun for me. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you guys do too. That's going to wrap us up for this one, guys. Be kind to yourselves, be kind to others, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye.